Welcome to Dad's Next Project.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Dad's Next Project, a podcast. Today we have a very special show for you. I am on site at the Hall of Flame Fire Museum in Phoenix, Arizona, with the Curator of Education, Mark Moorhead. Mark, how you doing today?
We're very glad to be here. Thank you very much. I'm good, Daniel. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get to it. Let's start talking about all these beautiful apparatus around us.
Well, sure. We're sitting
cool
here in Gallery 1, which is probably my favorite part of the museum. It's 19th century and earlier, hand and horse drawn. And we go all the way back to basically the first thing they came up with to replace the bucket as firefighting equipment, which was the hand pumper. And the earliest one that we have is from 1725. From the north of England. I always tell the little kids about 7 years before George Washington was born is when this was built. And it's how fires were fought in almost any kind of populated area from the mid to late 1600s on was with these hand pumpers. And they were initially, the early ones were invented in Holland, in Amsterdam, by a guy named Jan van der Heijden. And they developed, and other countries started knocking them off because they were very successful. And our argument here is that you can sort of make the case that the history of firefighting is the history of civilization. That, step one for man, for humankind, is here's fire, here's all this cool stuff you can do with it. Step two is, here's what happens as soon as fire gets out of control.
Yeah.
And, most cultures have some version of the proverb that fire is a good servant but a bad master. So our museum is the history of trying to keep fire a servant and not let it become a bad master. And it starts, as I said, for us in 1725. I mean, they know the ancient Egyptians had some kind of a fire pump. The ancient Romans had what they called a syringe where you can pump. Okay. But ours start with the hand pumpers, the European hand pumpers that launched in the mid to late 1600s. And you see them progress. We have many of them we have a bunch from Britain, but we have most of them are from the United States. And we have a couple from Japan from the 1880s. And then you see that as the need for a paid fire service arose, especially in big cities where they were tired of having these big crews, a lot of times basically were street gangs.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get rid of them and have a paid career fire service and make it a government job so they could control it. The invention that allowed that to happen was the steam fire engine. And so we have some steamers as well. One that served in the city of Reno, Nevada in 1904, which really changed firefighting because in urban areas it allowed firefighting to become a paid career option. But in the smaller towns and the rural communities, it usually stayed volunteer. And that still holds true to some extent. Almost 75% of the firefighters in the United States to this day are volunteer firefighters. It's a big, big part of what we honor here is the volunteer firefighting tradition. Okay. And then from there, we move on in Gallery 2 to motorized vehicles. And Gallery 2 has our motorized vehicles from the first half of the 20th century. The youngest truck in there is from 1951, and that's the truck, the American LaFrance from Miami, Arizona, that kids and grown-ups are allowed to climb on. And it's a great place if you're a dad, and you've got kids, especially, some of the younger kids. Great place to bring them in, let them climb all over this truck. We have people who are members of the museum just so they can bring their kids in and let them climb on the truck.
What kid doesn't want to get on a fire truck?
I always tell other museum people, unless you got dinosaurs, I've got you beat, basically.
Right, yeah.
As far as I can tell, and I was a dinosaur kid myself, nothing trumps dinosaurs. But fire trucks are a pretty close second, actually. And for some kids, it's number one.
Number one.
Yeah. And so, we have that, and that's a big thing. We also have a kids area in the back of Gallery 4, which is another hands-on part of the museum with all kinds of cool, fun activities. There's a little pole to slide down and all kinds of things like that. And, we want to make it educational, of course, but the best way, and for some things, especially with little kids, the best way to make something educational is to make it really fun.
Right, yeah.
And that's what we think.
They don't realize they're learning.
Exactly, and that's what we try to do here. And We do have educational programs, story times for littler kids, and guided tours for older kids and for adults and seniors, where you have to book those in advance with me. You can call and ask for me, and we'll get you booked. And we love to have the tour groups come in. That's a big part of what we do here. We, for the last 3 years, we've done every second grade class in the Cartwright School District has come here on a field trip, and lots of other schools come here as well. But with them, it's the whole district. So that's a big thing. Gallery 3 has some of the trucks that we take out on our in parades and public events and stuff like that, where we almost always have 5, 6, 7 trucks in the Fiesta Bowl parade. My daughter and I got to ride on there a couple of years ago. That was
Very
fun.
cool.
But we also have Rescue 4, which was a truck from Queens that responded to 9/11, as did every rescue truck in the New York area. There's one per borough, so all 5 of them responded. Rescue 4 lost everybody. Every person in the crew died, and the truck was damaged, but we have it restored and we have it on display here for people to see. Rescue 3 also lost their whole crew out of Harlem and the Bronx. Their door is displayed in our Hall of Heroes. Hall of Heroes is where we do honor to firefighters who died in the line of duty or who maybe didn't die but were decorated for valor, for doing something courageous. And then, of course, back behind the hands-on kids area, we have our Wildland Gallery where Smokey the Bear hangs out. And I always call him Smokey the Bear because it drives the Forest Service guys nuts instead of just calling him Smokey Bear. And so we have Smokey Bear back there, and we have some great displays and exhibits about a very important and increasingly important subject, which is wildland firefighting.
Especially in Arizona.
Oh, very much so, especially in Arizona. It's a big and sometimes tragic part of our history. And the West in general, just there's a lot of that history is there. But other places too. And we have our patch collection, which has patches from all over the world. If you count our patch collection, we have something from every continent, even Antarctica. They have one fire station down at McMurdo Sound, and we have their patch. And so that is a very, very broad overview of what we have. I've worked here for 18 years, and I've been still recently, have noticed things that I never noticed before. So, it's a real box of curiosities here.
Some catches your eye, some you walk by every day.
I never noticed that. Never read that sign. Yeah. So
awesome.
We've been around. We've been here in the Valley since 1973, and we've been in existence. The museum started in Wisconsin in 1961.
Tell me about the Getz. Getz,
Sure.
Right? GTZ,
Yeah, GTZ, the Getz family. They are the family that founded and are still kind of the guiding force and the support for the museum. Museum started. The seed for the museum, at least, started in 1955 when a nice lady named Olive Getz was riding through Winnetka, Illinois with her husband, a man named George Getz, and he noticed an old fire truck out in front of a car dealership. Car dealerships used to put old fire trucks out in front sometimes just as kind of an eye catcher. And he just casually said, it'd be fun to have one of those, right? So what do you get for the man who has everything? She arranged for her son, Bert, to purchase a used fire truck, a 1955 American LaFrance that was going out of service, or it was a 1924 American LaFrance. It was in 1955 that Oshkosh, Wisconsin, was retiring this truck. They retired it. Young Getz bought it for his dad, and they hid it from him somehow, kept him from finding out about it. And on Christmas morning, she sent him on some errand downtown, and in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and when he got back to the house, there was this truck sitting in the front driveway with a Christmas card on it. And it was a kind of almost in a way, it was like intended as like a gag gift kind of, but she didn't know what she started. He got really interested in fire trucks. He had never been a firefighter, but at a somewhat advanced age, he became a volunteer firefighter after that, and the truck became a reserve vehicle for the Lake Geneva department. But the other thing is he got really interested in fire trucks. He started to collect more and more and more of them. And in actually a very short time, by 1961, he had collected enough pieces of, some of which are, most of which are still on the floor to this day, to start a small museum there in Kenosha. And some crony of his said, you should call it the Hall of Flame. And, so I often say to people that we're the only museum I know of whose name is a pun.
Yeah, so 6 years from what was intended as a gag gift, because he mentioned, it might be cool to have a fire truck.
Exactly.
Turned into a museum.
Yep.
That now turned into where we are today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, later, the family and the family business, they were in commercial real estate and banking and some other things, but they moved out. The family kind of moved their headquarters out here from Wisconsin, and they brought the collection with them. They came out here for somebody's respiratory health for family members, which they used to do.
Big move in the
exactly.
Arizona along for a while.
But I'll tell you something, Daniel. The thing about this is it wasn't by design, but Phoenix is actually a very appropriate place for a museum of firefighting history. For a couple reasons. One is it's really dry here. So it's a good place for a collection of old motor vehicles because things don't like to rust here. Yeah. And the wooden antiques do very well out here too because things don't like to rot out here. It is very dusty. That's a constant struggle is with the dustiness of Arizona.
Yeah, I'd much rather dust than try and deal with the swelling and rotting of, all the wood spokes behind us.
Exactly. That's so it's good in that way. But also going all the way back, which admittedly isn't all that far back. Phoenix is a very young city. Mm-hmm. But going all the way back to the late 1800s as Phoenix was starting to grow, Phoenix has always taken great pride, and not just Phoenix, but the Valley in general, has always taken great pride in our fire services. It's always been something where Phoenix has always sort of prided itself on being innovative and cutting edge and state of the art. And we have a call center display. We actually don't have as many artifacts from Arizona as we would like. We have a few really good ones. We have a Seagrave that was the 4th fire truck that Phoenix ever bought, a 1921 Seagrave. And we also have the radio dispatch center, the call center, which came in the mid-50s and was used through the early 80s. And it seems kind of primitive if you look at it now, but it was really innovative at the time. People came from all over the world to check out this technology and take it back to their hometowns. And it was put together by some Phoenix firefighters. Of course, we had a fire chief here in Phoenix for many years, Alan Brunacini, who was not just nationally but internationally regarded as a big innovator in the fire service. And he and a Glendale fire chief, Gray Crabtree, were instrumental in developing the automatic aid system as opposed to the mutual aid system. So there's a lot of proud history of the fire service here in Phoenix and in the Valley in general. So like I said, it wasn't by design, but it kind of makes sense that we're here.
Yeah, and I saw on the sign, you guys you're the world's largest?
We are, at least as far as we know, we're the world's largest. I've had people dispute it. I had a guy tell me that the Tokyo Fire Museum was bigger, but when he went on to describe it, I don't think it counts because it's 4 stories.
Okay.
Bottom floor is a working fire station. Next floor, this is as he described it. Okay. Next floor is administrative offices for the Tokyo department.
Okay.
And then the next 2 floors are what I understand is a really, really good fire museum. And so if you add up all that floor space, supposedly it's more than ours. I don't buy it. I think we're the biggest. We're about the size of a Costco in here. People do driving by, people don't always realize how big we are.
It is a little misleading.
Yeah, it's kind of bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, that kind of thing.
And even in here, everything's, the galleries are all kind of separated.
And this was the whole museum when it started, this first gallery.
This first building right
here.
Exactly.
But gradually we've expanded till now. Also, there's a great fire museum in Hudson, New York, where the firefighters retirement community is, and it's actually connected to the retirement community, where retired firefighters serve as the docents in many cases. Okay. And it's really huge. It's only a little smaller than us, but it is a little smaller than us.
A little smaller, yeah.
And that is all, as is often the case, it's all New York stuff. And not all New York City, a lot of it's from the New York State. Yeah. Actually, 2 carriages back, 1 carriage back from this, there is a beautiful fire truck that was built in Reading, or not a fire truck, it's a carriage, a hose reel, from the 1850s. It was built in Reading, Pennsylvania, and for many years that was in that fire museum in Hudson, New York. And they got so tired of guys from New York complaining, hey, that thing's not from New York, it's from Pennsylvania, and so finally they gave it to us just so to like open up a little space for another New York piece.
Nice. So, and we spoke briefly earlier. I frequent fire museums when I travel with, or used to travel with my wife before the two kids slowed that down. And that is usually the case, is the museums are very, very localized.
Yeah, they're parochial to that area.
Yeah, if it's not the city they're in, it's maybe a little bit of the surrounding area, possibly the state.
Exactly.
But to have apparatus from New York, Phoenix,
Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin,
other countries.
We don't have as much as we'd like from other countries, not because it's prohibitively expensive to bring stuff from other countries. But we have, here we have like 4 or 5 pieces from Great Britain. We have, bigger pieces I'm talking about. Okay. We have a couple pieces from Japan. We have a couple pieces from Germany. We have a beautiful truck it's actually the oldest fire truck. It's from 1913. It's the oldest fire truck we have that was built to be a fire truck, that wasn't converted from a horse-drawn piece or something. It was built in England, but it was served the city of Lima, Peru. For many years. Wow. In storage, we have another British truck. We have some stuff from other countries. So we are an international collection. Like you were talking about, my hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania, there's a very good museum, Firefighters Historical Museum down on the Bayfront, but it's all from just that little area, like kind of that tri-state area, Erie, and maybe a few little pieces from Ohio and New York. It's from up in there, but it's not. And that's how most of them are, and some of them are really good. Some of them are excellent. Yeah. But ours is, we try to do the whole sort of social and technological history of firefighting, the whole sweep of it. And I'll tell you something, Daniel. That's one of the things that is moving to me about this place. It's people talk, as they should, about like the heroism and the bravery and the courage of firefighting and the sacrifice of firefighting. And it's all absolutely true and very appropriate to talk about, but the other, and it's all very moving, and we do a lot of that. We have our Hall of Heroes here. We have the memorial trucks to 9/11 and to the Granite Mountain Hotshots, and it's one of the more somber parts of the museum. But we're very proud of that, and we really honor that. But the other thing that's moving to me about this is just the human ingenuity that's on display. The cleverness of people who built on one idea, and then they built on that idea, and they built on the. And if you go through the museum, starting with Gallery 1, and you work your way through, you really see how the problem of firefighting. I mean, again, it was like everybody had to have fire in their house every day, right? You had to heat your house, to light your house, to cook your food. All of those things. A lot of jobs like blacksmithing depended on fire. But you also had to control it. I mean, fires, they're still too common, of course, but they used to be much more common. Houses really burned, too, depending on where you were in the world. They
didn't have all of the safer materials.
Of course, you were in a plank shack or a log cabin or a bamboo hut, and you had a thatched roof or a tar roof, and you were using candles and lamps and stuff like that, kerosene lamps in your house. Fires happen all the time, and they were really hard to put out. And you can see how somebody came up with this idea, and it's like, oh, that works really well. And then somebody else was like, yeah, but how about if we do this too? And then somebody from that, years would go by, and somebody like, well, yeah, that works, but how about if we try this? And it's just this great kind of evolution of human ingenuity that I think is one of the really wonderful things about this museum, is that you get to see that.
It is. You can literally see the problem solving.
Exactly.
That the fire industry did.
And they were doing this without computers, without computer-aided drafting. It was just humans figuring stuff out, and that is one of the wonderful things about this. And we've tried to set up the museum so that you can kind of track that progress.
Yeah,
as you go through.
It's great that you guys are honoring that, because it is not something that's firefighters. Public safety, they're called when other people have a problem they can't figure out.
Exactly. Yep, that's it.
And we have to figure out.
Right.
Well, I work in public safety, but yeah,
Right.
we have to figure out problems as we go.
Yeah.
And that's how the industry grows. That's how we provide better services, and to be
And it
able to
affects-
honor that as well.
Of course, and it affects all these other areas like, the rise of EMT and paramedic services and how that kind of came about. It's something to remember that, like, in the early days of that, doctors and the medical establishment were kind of like, oh, that's crazy. You're gonna have these kids out there running lines and doing tracheotomies and defibrillating people and stuff like that. You're out of your mind. And they quickly saw, no, the opposite is true. The classic idea of the golden hour, that if you're hurt or you're sick and you get care in the first hour, your chances of survival and of recovery skyrocket. Well, to us, from our place in history, we're like, duh, but it wasn't so obvious to people back then. And so when the EMT program arose, there were people who thought it was a terrible, scary, disastrous idea. And then it became clear that it was, and then it got built upon so that there's even more that people could do. And in a similar way with mutual aid and automatic aid, firefighters used to be, the way they talk about law enforcement, people being kind of turfy and keeping saying that's bad even in law enforcement, but it was really no point in it in firefighting.
Sorry, your house is on the wrong side of the street.
Wrong side of
I'm
the
not
street,
fighting
or
that
yeah,
fire.
exactly. Or you'd set up your hydrants so they had a different gauge than the other.
There's still some of that.
Yeah, and you get that turfiness, but and Phoenix was a big early place for this. Was this idea that it's like, no, if I have a heart attack right now and you call 911, we're in Phoenix here at the museum, but it's probably the little Tempe station right up here
down the street.
that's gonna come and get me. And then if the next call, if they're closest to the next call and it's another 10 blocks inside Phoenix, they go to that one. By the end of the day, they could be out in Tolleson, and guys from Phoenix could be out in Gilbert. And it works. The idea is basically all that changes is the name on the door of the fire truck, and otherwise this is all one big fire district. And it seems weirdly obvious, but it sure wasn't for a long time. So this is the sort of thing, the sort of development that we try to chronicle here.
So earlier you mentioned you offer tours and field trips and that sort of thing. Let's get into a little bit more of that. How if someone's traveling to Phoenix, how can they get a tour? If there's schools that want to reach out and do field trips, that sort of thing.
Well, all of that is available. The main thing with the book tour, with a formal tour where I or a docent or somebody takes you around and shows you stuff from the collection, is you got to book in advance. You got to call the museum and book with me or book with somebody here and get on the schedule so we know you're coming. That's the main thing. So we just don't want to be out, or we don't want to have you come in at the same time we got another tour booked or whatever. So we do a couple of different levels of tours. For the littlest kids, pre-K, K, first and second grade, what we usually do is a story time tour. Okay. And that's where the kids come in, we read them a fun, kind of non-threatening, fire safety oriented story. Okay. And then we do a little presentation on some principles of fire safety. They get to play on our 1951 American LaFrance fire truck from Miami. And after a little of that, we take them through the museum. We show them 2 or 3 things. We don't push the attention span at that age.
Smart.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about the Dalmatians. We talk about the fire alarm. We try to teach. It's part of what we try to teach about 911. We show them Smokey Bear, sorry, back in the fire in the Wildland Fire Gallery, and then we turn them loose and let them play in the kids area, and that's the whole tour, and it works pretty well. We do many of those, hundreds of those a year. It's my favorite of the tours to do, But we also then, from the 3rd grade up through high school, really through college, we do a guided tour, which is just what it sounds like. And we do these also for adult groups and for senior groups, and that's another big favorite of mine is the senior groups. They're really terrific and seem to really get into this most of the time. And we get to go through them. Where it's just what it sounds like. We go through the museum. We hit some of the highlights, tell some of the stories of some of this stuff, and of course, afterwards, people are free to wander the museum at will and check it out. Because, of course, even on a 2-hour tour, we're only going to scratch the surface of what's here. So we have those options. And again, you just call the place. You can talk. You can ask for me. My name is Mark. But there are other people here you can talk to who will book the tour for you in advance. It's just we have to find you a date that is. Now, you were mentioning people from out of town. You're welcome to call, and if I happen to, or I or a docent happens to be free, we'll be more than happy to give you a little tour. Again, we just need you to book in advance so we know you're coming. But even if you don't do that, if you just walk in off the street, whether you're local or from out of town, either one is fine. It's still a great place to just self-tour. There's signage that explains these things, and we have docents around who can answer questions if you have any, and especially if you got kids or grandkids you want to bring in, have them play on the truck, have them play in the kids area. It's a great place to just come in without a booked tour as well. And actually, much more of our traffic is people who just come in than the tours.
Yeah, and if there's a family that wants to come check this out, we are currently right down the street from the Phoenix Zoo.
Right.
So you're making a day of it.
Yeah.
Maybe hit the zoo early. Come here a little after. I think you guys are open to 10. Come here first, then go to the zoo. There you go.
Yeah. The Botanical Gardens is right near here.
Right down the street.
The Hole in the Rock at Papago Buttes is right near here. Pueblo Grande Museum is right down here. We're in a little bit of a kind of a museum hot zone. The Arizona Historical Museum is right up in Tempe, just not even 5 minutes from here. So there's a lot of cool places to check out. I mean, there's some great museums all through Phoenix. The Musical Instrument Museum is fantastic. The Science Center downtown, the Heard Museum's one of the best of its kind in the world. But we like to feel that we're right there on that list, in terms of
I would
excellence.
put you high up on that list.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
a little biased, but
Appreciate that.
I would put you way up
Yeah,
there.
and I mean, I really want to stress, I know you have, because of what you do for a living, you have a particular interest in this subject matter, but we are not just for firefighters, not even close. We're, I think if you're a history buff, you will find a really interesting perspective on history here at this museum. If you're a mechanical or a technological buff, or just a gearhead, if you just like old motor vehicles, you'll find some really cool, interesting things. The engineering on some of these, like we were talking about, the early engineering on some of these things is really fascinating and inspirational. If you just kind of like the color and drama and excitement of the fire service, you'll find things. We got a great gift shop here for kids and grandkids, and the fire buff on your Christmas list and all that. I'm always trying to sell this place as a Black Friday destination.
There you go.
Yeah. So there's lots of reasons to come in here. You don't have to be a firefighter or even really a fire buff. If you're not a fire buff, maybe we'll make you one if you come in here.
Right? Yeah. The founder became a firefighter
Exactly.
after he got his first fire truck. A little backwards, but
Exactly. But it absolutely happened for him. And I'll be very honest with you. I was not, my background is not the fire service, nor is it museums. I was a journalist for many years, and I did a number of other things here, all over the country, really. And I just didn't know all that much about it when I started working here, and I've been here, as I said, 18 years, and I've certainly become a firefighting buff. I really have developed that fascination and that respect and that enthusiasm for the fire service and for its traditions over getting on toward 20 years of working here. So I'm a good example of how it can turn you into a buff.
All right. Yeah. Well, before I go get lost wandering around in this place.
Sure.
How can the audience, other than coming to visit and hitting the gift shop, how can they support you?
Well, coming to visit and hitting the gift shop is our favorite way for people to do it. Becoming a member is a great way to do it. You can, we have different membership levels. I think, and I want to say, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, I think the family membership is $75, and that means, you can bring up to about 6 people in at any given time, and it's called a family membership, but, we don't test your DNA or anything. So it's great to bring kids in. The membership's a year. Bring kids in to play on the truck and stuff whenever they feel like it. But also, you got out-of-town visitors or something like that. Wonderful thing to do for out-of-town visitors is to bring them in here, and show them around. Memberships are good, but then we have higher levels, a helmet level membership that goes up from there in cost, but also in kind of what you get for it. That's a great way, but also we do not refuse donations. You can donate right on our website, hallofflame.org, and that is and tell people about it. Also, like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. Like us on Facebook or other social media that I don't understand. Please, get involved with us there. We have a YouTube channel like you. You can find a whole lot of videos. Many of them are me running my mouth about this stuff, but other kinds of videos as well that give you an idea of it. But yeah, talk us, if you come in and you enjoy it and you feel you like the idea of what we're doing here, talk us up with your friends and family. We really do appreciate that. And of course, support your local fire services and public safety services in general. And that's, of course, just something that everybody ought to do anyway.
I full-heartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
Everybody support your public safety, your family. The fire, PD, EMS, they sacrifice a lot to take care of you guys.
But Daniel, we really appreciate you coming in and spending some time with us.
Yep, I appreciate you taking the time with me. All right, there you have it, everybody. Hall of Flame Fire Museum, Phoenix, Arizona. We'll have all of the details on how you can check it out or come visit this place and all their social medias in the description. So thank you again, Mark.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for enjoying another episode of Dad's Next Project.